Make sure you turn off your microphone, Marc. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Sustainable Spain through Tradition and Innovation. I have to say, I am very, very excited about today's seminar. We are going to talk about two regions that are really dear to my heart. I have been to all of those regions. And I do believe that if we want to move forward in our efforts to adapt and mitigate climate change, the only way we are going to be able to do this is through collective work and also getting ideas from other countries and other regions. So each of those regions today that we're going to talk about, Rías Baixas, Jerez, and the Penedès, they're all very different, but they're all sharing differently some solutions to look forward. I just want to thank today Foods and Wines from Spain and Ethics for making this seminar possible. Just a reminder, the seminar is getting recorded, so if you have to run off, go back to work, the webinar will be available online in a week from now. We also be going to sharing the link on the newsletter. If you haven't registered to the newsletter, please do so by going to tastingclimatechange.com. We always share the links of previous seminar throughout the newsletter and other information. My name is Michelle Bouffard. I am the co-founder of Tasting Climate Change. And today with me, I have César Saldaña, President of the Regulating Councils of the Denominations of Origin of Jerez-Xérèz-Sherry, and Vicky Mareque, General Manager of Pazo de Señorans, and finally, Marc Picón Malivern, Export Manager at Sumarroca. So without further ado, we will start with César, who is going to actually talk about how the region of Jerez has adapt to climate change. I think we have a lot of things to learn from them because they've been, challenged with water for a very long time and actually found a way to adapt. So I think we can learn from that. But it's also very interesting to see how the style of wine in the region is evolving, going to tradition and in somehow innovating as well by the way the regulation might be changing, and also looking at other grapes that we might not know as well in the region. César, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Michelle, and thank you for having me. It's a great opportunity for me to communicate the things that we're doing down here in Jerez, a region in which probably that title of that sentence of tradition and innovation is very, very applicable. I will share a presentation. Let me see if I can. Okay, where is it? Oh, here. Let me share. Just let me know when the presentation is okay. It seems like it's on the screen now, right? So I have entitled my presentation "Sustainability in a Frontier Land" because, as you probably know, the region where sherry wines are coming from is pretty much in the very south of Spain, pretty much in the land of frontier. We are in the southernmost wine region in Europe. We're at the very peak of the Iberian Peninsula in the province of Cádiz, very close to the Strait of Gibraltar. So clearly, pretty much in the south of our country. This is a satellite picture of the region. You can see the proximity of the ocean. This is where the pointer is now is Jerez. This is where I'm located right now. Less than 10 miles from the ocean, from the Atlantic Ocean. In fact, we're surrounded by water. I mean, not only the Atlantic Ocean, but what we have in beyond the northern frontier of the region, which is the Guadalquivir River here. What we have is the marshes of the big natural reserve of Coto Doñana, which is, inundated areas for most of the year. Also in the south of the region, we have salt fields and other, and also marshes and esteros, which are traditional fishing areas where we catch the fish using the high tide. So water plays a very important role in the microclimatic conditions of the region. I will switch to a more readable map where you can see the wine region, a fairly small wine region in terms of surface. Only 7,000 hectares of vineyard are planted in the region, which is well known by what we usually call the Sherry Triangle, the three towns of Jerez de la Frontera, El Puerto de Santa María, and Sanlúcar de Barrameda. This is where sherry wines are actually aged, even though the grapes can be grown in other areas around, other municipalities around, like Trebujena, Chipiona, Chiclana, etc. So as I said, pretty much a southern region in the northern hemisphere. That means obviously a lot of sunshine, a lot of sunlight, an average of 300 days of complete sunny skies, which is always good for the grapes. Very mild winters, temperatures going very rarely below 0 degrees centigrade. But then obviously very long summer periods, very hot summers with temperatures going fairly high. We have a decent amount of rainfall. We have about 620 liters per square meter, 25 inches as an average annual rainfall. Now, the issue here obviously is that we have this amount of rainfall, which in comparison to other regions in Spain is fairly high. But we have it pretty much concentrated in just a few weeks during the year. So, as you said at the beginning of the session, we're struggling. We have always been struggling with the fact of preserving the water that we get generous in a generous way normally, but very much concentrated. And two predominant winds, which are also very important climatic factors for us: the Levante wind coming from the east, very hot and dry, very important for the maturation of the grapes, very important also for the healthiness of the grapes. And the fresh and humid wind coming from the Atlantic Ocean. A critical aspect of sherry making is the soil. Of course, it's only because we have this magic soil called the albariza. We're able to capture all the rainfall that we get in the winter months, and we are able to keep it in the underground to moisture, to humidify the roots of the plant over the very dry months of summer. A soil which is very rich in calcium carbonate. This is in fact the name albariza means white chalk, right? So it's very white in color, highly porous in structure, and totally capable to retain the humidity. It's probably the primary factor of the primary reason why we've been having a quality viticulture in Jerez for a long time. This soil is the result of years and years of sedimentation of diatom algae and other microorganisms which were in the ocean that was covering the southern part of the Iberian Peninsula some time ago. I'm talking 30, 40 million years ago in the Oligocene. And the continuous sedimentation of these microorganisms created a highly porous type of soil that, as I said, is totally capable to retain the humidity that we get in winter time. A very singular viticulture is what we practice here, and all around the very special type of soil that we have. And also As I said before, a combination of very traditional techniques, very traditional pruning systems, and cultivation systems, and a lot of innovation, a continuous adaptation, particularly in these years in which climatic change is really making a difference. One of the things we're noticing is that the entire annual cycle is getting shorter. We keep on having the sprouting in March. I mean, we haven't seen that the starting of the sap circulation is becoming earlier. But what we see definitely is earlier harvests. Traditionally, we've been harvesting in the mid-September, and in the last 15 years, it's always August and even sometimes end of July that our Palomino grapes are ready. One of the ancient techniques that we've been carrying out traditionally, and we keep on doing that, is a technique called the Asar piado. We prepare the soil very carefully after the harvest, so that we create small barriers that would prevent the water that we get, as I said before, in just a few weeks during the winter. We prevent the water from going down the hill, and so we help the Alvarinho to totally absorb 100% of the rainfall that we get during the rainy season. Having said that, we base our viticulture in a lot of traditional techniques and methods and practices. One of the things that we are now changing in the region is we're going beyond the traditional grape varieties that we've been working. Nowadays, Palomino, Pedro Jimenez and Moscatel are the three varieties that are authorized by the technical file and the denomination of origin, but we are recuperating some of the traditional grape varieties, autochthonous grape varieties that have also been in practice in the past in the region. We've been working with a very important research center that we have in the region, Rancho de la Merced, and also with some individual growers who have kept some of the pre-phylloxeric varieties that were in use in the region, and that are really showing greater potential in the new climatic circumstances that we're living. So in the forthcoming technical file, I mean, we're going now through the process of updating our technical file. We will be approving some of the, as I said, traditional varieties that we used to have in the region in the past, like Beba, Cañocazo, Mantuo, Vijeriega, etc. Some of these varieties are in use, by the way, in other regions in Spain, in the Canary Islands and a few other places, and used to be important varieties in Jerez in the past. Other changes that we will have in our regulations soon, we're in the administrative process, so hopefully before the end of the year, we will have these new regulations in place, are affecting viticulture. We are putting more emphasis on the individuality and the differential factors of the different pagos. Also, as I've mentioned, the new old varieties. We are also extending the triangle. I've mentioned that so far it's only Jerez, El Puerto, and Sanlúcar, those areas where sherry can be aged. This will change, and also in places like Trebujena, Chiclana, which are neighbor to the area. Also, the aging of sherry will be taking place. We're creating some new categories like Fino Viejo. We are implementing some changes in labeling. But the most important thing, in my opinion, is that sherry will no longer be exclusively a fortified wine. We are introducing a change so that some sherries, some specific sherries, will be able will be admitted not just through fortification, but also with natural alcoholic strength. As you know, we use fortification in the production of sherry, because sherry is what legally is considered a liquor wine, one in which there's an addition of alcohol, like port, like Madeira, like Marsala. We do have some minimum alcoholic strengths for the different styles of sherry. Fino, for instance, is 15%, Oloroso is 17%. So now the thing that has changed, or the fact that has provoked that we have entered into this reflection, is the fact that we're getting higher alcoholic content with this climatic change process. So what if this minimum alcoholic strength is acquired just through fermentation, without the help of fortifying the wines? Well, today with our rules, we'll still have to fortify, right? Because as I said, from a regulatory standpoint, sherry is a liquor wine. So the change that we are introducing is that sherry will be not just a liquor wine, but also just alternatively a wine obtained exclusively through fermentation. How this happens? Well, the producers that are actually experimenting and producing wines in this way are generally using all the vines, all the plants with much lower yields. Usually here, for instance, last year we had an average yield in Jerez of 8,000 kilos per hectare. So normally producers who are trying to obtain wines at 15% or higher, obviously they get no more than maybe 6,000 or 5,000, something like that. Also, these producers are recuperating all techniques to improve the concentration of sugar in the grapes, like what they call the asoleo, which is the sun drying of the grapes, a technique that we have traditionally used exclusively for sweet wines in order to concentrate the sugar, but that we're doing also now for dry sherries in order to increase the alcoholic strength without having to fortify. In fact, some of the producers who are actually producing this kind of sherries, like Luis Perez or Ramiro Ibanez, or some of these winemakers, they are even doing harvest bench by bench, picking exclusively those grapes that have acquired the right maturation level. This will probably in the future open the door to introduce another style, which used to be very traditional in the region about a century ago, that producers stopped making. These are the wines called Vinos de Pasto, in the sense they are still wines. As you probably know, when we make sherry, traditional sherry, fortified sherry, what we do, we may make first a white wine, and then this white wine is fortified in order to either progress with the biological aging or stop the biological aging. Well, these wines before fortification, when they are maybe 13% in alcohol or 12.5 in alcohol, this is what we call mostos or vinos de pasto, and we see more and more companies selling these wines, putting these wines in the market as such. So this is probably a new category of wines that in the future will be part of the deal. Not yet. This is not something that we have modified in our technical fight yet, but most probably the fact that sherry becomes not just a liquor wine, but also a wine, a non-fortified wine, will in the future open the way to this to this type of wine. Other aspect of sustainability that is pretty much a growing trend is the region, is the certification of wineries for climate protection. I don't know if you're familiar with this certification system. We have some of the larger operators in the region, which are also within this certification, environmental certification scheme, which was created by the Spanish Wine Federation some years ago, and which is basically working on five different levels. Is a certification system in which 5 key areas are taken into account. Obviously, energy efficiency and renewable energy. Also the reduction in greenhouse gases, water management, waste reduction, and diversity. So we have now most of the larger producers like González Vías or Lustau or Barbadillo, they're all in this scheme, and we see more and more companies also entering into this certification scheme, which is certainly a growing trend in the region. Finally, obviously, once you pass this the audits for these different areas, you get this certification of wineries for climate protection. In practical terms, what we see more and more in the region is houses, the different bodegas trying to fight against the consequences of climate change in these areas that I've mentioned. For instance, González Vías has reduced 20% of total electricity power by covering the entire winemaking plant with solar panels. They have, in the last 10 years, they have reduced 60% their CO2 emissions in their different operations. Another area which is becoming an important field in Jerez is planting trees in the vineyard, which is something that, for instance, this house has done in the last 5 years, planting 700 trees. Another example of sustainability practices in the region, like, for instance, Bodegas Fundador, another important producer in the region, not just for sherry but also for brandy. They're using biogas, the biogas generated in the purification of the vinaces, the distillation residues, and through that they have obtained savings of 15% of all the natural gas consumed, or they have also reduced in 25% the consumption of water used in the mass rectification process. So a number of different examples of how important and how much the sustainability practices are really being carried out by the different producers. Let me finish with another example. Another area which is becoming a priority for a number of houses is keeping diversity, biodiversity in our vineyards, in our territory. Barbadillo, another important producer, is developing a very important project which is called Barbadillo en Singular, in which they are launching different wines, and each new wine will create funds to recuperate specific species of different types of birds, like the chorlitejo patinegro, which is a type of bird which was in danger in the area, and that was very traditional bird in the area that was in danger. So more and more houses are the different sherry producers are pretty much committed with these different elements that will make sure that even though we are in a frontier land in terms of winemaking, we keep on having a future, not just for our business, but also also for the territory in which our business is located. This is basically what I had prepared as a presentation. So and I'll be happy to take the questions that anyone in the audience is willing to make. Thank you very much, Michelle.
Thank you so much. That was a great presentation. We already have questions coming in. I will ask the questions at the end. I do invite you to put your questions in the Q&A, and then at the end we'll have a panel discussion. I do have one question that is directed to you, though, Cesar, and it's for me. I'm just curious because when I was in Jerez a few years ago, people were already talking about making unfortified wine, and they were playing with it. How do you feel about it? Meaning that we associate so much your region to fortified wine. What does it mean for when you're going out there to tell the story? Because you know it impacts the style and the taste of wine as well.
Well, you have to understand that fortification is a technique that we started using here like 3,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago as a stabilization tool. I mean, our wines have been wines that have been exported since very ancient times, and fortification was primarily a stabilization technique. Later on, and that was in the 18th century, we discovered that different levels of alcohol, different levels of alcoholic strength in the wine will determine a different evolution in the wine, either for biological agent at 15% or beyond for oxidative agent. So in fact, getting to 15% was just, or to 17%, which are the two steps in the making of the basic styles of sherry, is just a condition so that biological agent is kept or oxidative agent is provoked. Now, with more with a change in the climatic conditions, with alcohol being or maturation of the grapes being higher, more and more winemakers started to question, particularly for the production of finos and manzanillas. Some of them started to question why having to fortify if naturally we would get to the 15%, which is the minimum, so that the floor and the biological agent would continue, right? So it's the reflection about that idea that really provoked that some producers started thinking on just getting this 15% minimum alcoholic strength naturally, and not just not by adding alcohol. No question there will be a slight change in the style of the wine, but well, basically what we think is that winemakers should be free to either follow the traditional route or this new route of having the 15% minimum strength by fermentation. So it's about diversity. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. We have more questions coming in for you, but I want to go to the other two speakers and we'll come back at the end. So Michael and Samuel, please hold on. We will answer your questions. We'll just do it at the end. Thank you so much, Cesar. I have a million more questions for you, but we do have to go to the next speaker and then we'll come back to you. Thank you. My next speaker from Pazo de Señorans, which is I'm a big fan. Vicky, I'm so happy that you are here with us today. I have been to your bodega, huge fan of your wines. So I was really happy that you actually accepted to share. And Vicky will talk about a lot of different things. So in Rías Baixas, it's a very complete a reality in terms of climate than Jerez. Water is not a problem. And in fact, you have adapted your viticulture practice over the years. Well, traditionally, you've had pergolas. And I was told when you first started to learn about wine, in your original course, they always tell you pergolas is bad and VSP is good. So I had a really interesting discussion with you and your mom when I went to visit. So we'll talk about viticulture practices and how you're adapting to the climate change. Alvarinho, of course, malolactic, should we do it or not, with the climate change? And finally, you'll talk about perhaps other indigenous grapes in the region. So Vicky, it's all yours. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for inviting us, Michelle. And first of all, please be patient because my English is kind of oxidated before the pandemic. So I try to do my best, okay? I share the presentation with you to put you on the map. I'm just going to give you some data, and then we answer the questions more specific that you asked to us. So let's share. There we are. So this is Pazo de Señorans. The appellation is called Rías Baixas. And here we are, northwest of Spain, just on top of Portugal. The region is called Galicia, is the orange place. And inside Galicia, the appellation is these red lines, very near Pontevedra area, okay? We are divided in 5 sub-areas, Salnés, Rosal, Condado de Tea, Sotomayor, and Nulla, and we are in concrete placed in the first one, which is the biggest, Salnés, okay? The appellation allows us to use these varieties, all are indigenous, okay? So Alvarinho is the most unknown, but we are allowed to use Cariño Blanco, Treixadura, Loureira Blanca, Godelio, and Torrontés. And as red varieties, we are able to use Sousson, Caña Tinta, Espadeira, Loureira Tinta, Mencía, and Brancellao. This is just for your information because Pazo de Señorans at the moment is 100% Alvarinho producer, okay? So Alvarinho still represents 90% of the appellation, has a very long life cycle, vegetative cycle. So the grape comes out end of February, March, and we do the harvest second part of September, okay? The branches are small with a very round grape and very highly aromatic berries. We have very low risk of hail and frost and a great incidence of rain in the flowering, okay? We lose a lot of branches at that time, if it rains, of course. Normally it's very easy to get the alcoholic degrees with any problem normal year, but the nice thing is that we have a very well balance between pH and acidity also. Well, this is one of our plants that, as you see, is very, very vigorous, like a tree. This is a branches beginning. And to place a little on the map, we would like to make the difference in between, not to confuse ecological agriculture with sustainable agriculture. The first one aims to preserve the environment and obtain more natural and organic products, thus eliminating the use of chemical products such as fertilize, pesticides, etc. The second one, use tools and products that do not harm the environment or the people, seek to establish good practice that respect nature without affecting the quality of crops, with techniques aimed at supporting sustainable land management. Okay, it's a little more complex model, we think, to manage because the land has to be prepared little by little, and the changes have to be introduced gradually. Okay, and many processes have been implanted in the area for a long time, so it's a bit difficult. Sustainable vineyard, okay, is the one that looks not to overexploit water resources, tries to prevent the soil erosion and promote the biodiversity, and about the use of systemic chemicals in the vines in favor of to use more organic products or zero waste. So how do we try to manage with the sustainability in Señorans in terms of nature, social and economic? Señorans and Rías Baixas, okay? This area is social sustainable because thanks to the cultivation of the vines in the area, the neighbors can maintain their own farms, not abandon the crops, and remain living in the rural areas, okay? Here, we have to remember that the territory is a smallholder with an average plot of 1,789 meters square plot, okay? For what the land is in the hands of many, many people, okay? 6,000 viticultures, 4,900 hectares is the appellation, okay? In terms of economic, of course, because the wineries, normally we use our own grapes, but also the grapes that are produced by our viticultures. We always produce ours and theirs, so we pay the grapes to them, so they sustain the land and earn a little money for it. For example, we buy grape to 92 families, okay? So we buy to those families 99 hectares, and they are divided in 92 families, and they are all around 16 kilometers from the winery. And in terms of nature, because the plantations are located in our environment and respect the biodiversity of the area and allow them to maintain other crops such as orchards in areas less suitable for planting the vines. Okay, oops, sorry. So the day-a-day in our place. Well, this is a pigeon house and part of our vines. We have 93% in Pergola system, okay? Just to advance next question. Okay, we work, first is the variety. It's indigenous, so it's kind of sustainable. It's very well adapted to the territory with very acid soils, granitic, and a very specific climatologic characteristic, as we will see later, which makes the crop more sustainable. The grain is small and the skin is very thick and with a lot of seeds. Bueno, what we do, plant cover, we leave a permanent plant cover nowadays. In this area, we can avoid herbicides, they are not used, and we plant fruit and aromatic plantation that attract all beneficial insects. So the biodiversity is here. About the pest control, we need to treat, okay? You know that the climate here is humid and hot, and the changes are kind of aggressive. We are inside not only Pazo de Señorans, but many other wineries inside a integrated production certification that control us the number of treatments and the active ingredients that we use for combat the diseases. Okay, we also we monitorize the disease with the data from the weather station that we have to optimize the treatments, and is Monet Viticulture and a technology platform that translates all the data for us. And of course, we use biological control with pheromones, which is very important here also to avoid the polilla. And we are able also to reuse the resources, okay? We have a biological depuration to clean the rest of the cleaning of the stainless steel and the winery, and we are allowed to use this water to do irrigation in the gardens that we use for the enotourist area, okay? We give a second use to the tartaric. We have a quite nice volume of tartaric. We sell it to fabrics that transform it again in tartaric and sell it to, I don't know who. And we also do compost, okay? The rest of the pruning are very long here because of the pergola, and that and the rest of the pruning, the rest of the skins, we use it and create compost to use as fertilizer, okay? We try to be very exquisite, respectful with the environment. Okay, about the wine, of course, the wine, as we told you here, Alvarinho grape has a great balance between pH, acidity, and degree, so the wine has a minimal intervention, okay? We look for the right moment of the harvest, and that allows us to really touch very tiny the wine. We make each of the movement inerticize with nitrogen because we are looking for a low level of sulfurous, and our variety also allowed us to work like that. That is because we look for a kind of different volumes on the mouth, okay? And we also try to be respectful with the sustainable cultural heritage, in the sense that we are in a very ancient house from 16th century, and we restore, trying to respect what was done in the what was used to be in the old years, okay? And at the same time, all the new buildings that, of course, we need, they have been built trying to respect the environment, okay? These are some photos of the property, and this is the land. As you see, most of our vines are all pergola system, okay? This is new buildings, and Rías Baixas in the past years, okay? Here, that is an introduction to try and explain you, answer the questions Michelle asked to us, okay? So according to the National Institute of Statistics, the median temperature in Spain from the year 1900 increased 1.3 degrees in Spain. In Rías Baixas, still the increase only in 0.77, okay? This is due to the proximity of the Atlantic Oceans, where the changing between the cooling and the heating of the water are extremely slow. So that means that the climate and the temperatures much milder than in other areas more continental of Spain and even from Rías Baixas, okay? Here, I stay a little so you can check. This is the evolution in the past 10 years of the temperature in our area, okay? In our station we told you about before. So as you can see, so we go from 1 year, in 2010, we have 13 and 13.54, but the rest we move in between 14 and 15. And we cannot, as you see in the data, we cannot respond to any pattern at the moment. So it would be quite difficult for us to draw conclusions regarding how the climate change is affecting our specific area, because as you see, there is no pattern by the moment. We are following the same statistics as in the past years. We have more, but not to put you crazy with the data, I only put the last 10 years. And the same happens with the rain. You see here, Jerez, César, the rain, the median rain is 1,547. So we are a bit higher. But again, you see, the median pluviometry is 1,500 liters meters square per year. So for us, the difference is between when the rain comes, because it can come during the flower, it can come during the maturation. So that makes a difference. But really, we still cannot respond to a pattern at the moment. So it will be quite difficult again to get any conclusion about climate change in terms of rain in a specific area. Those are again data from our station. Okay, so it's put on our vines. Now we start with the question. Here I need to talk a little more about Pazo de Señorans, because I will tell you about our own experience. Okay. So first of all, what I told you, the VPE here is double Guyot, because Alvarinho grape is very vigorous, and a lot of plants compared with Pergola system. Here we see a little, this is a plot that we planted 10 years ago, and is half in Pergola system and half in wire system, okay? It's 3.5 hectares, and it's what we call our experimental plot to learn about the VPEs in our area, okay? So what we see, we planted in 2010, half in trails and half in Pergola system. VPEs double Guyot, cost 45% lower, 2,700 plants per hectare. In the case of Pergola, 45% higher in terms of cost, 950 plants per hectare. What we see, double Guyot, VPEs, trails, we can mechanize everything except the harvest that could be mechanized, but we are not allowed in our appellation. The harvest is always manual. And in the terms of the Pergola, 100% is manual, except the cutting of the leaves and the treatments, of course, that we are allowed to give them by tractor. The rest we need to do manual. Similar in terms of diseases, we suffer the same. Similar in terms of production, in terms of every vintage or every year, we get more or less same production. But we see that in the double gouillotte, in BPE, second year, we are starting to have grapes, and we need until the fourth to start seeing grapes in the pergola system. Okay, but the problem that we see in our experience personal is that the maturation in the guar system, trails, BPEs, is unbalanced. What we look as ripeness, this balance in between acidity, degree, pH, we don't get it, and we do get it in the pergola system. Okay, that is our own experience, I remember. So the pergola follows its natural course. In the beginning, good maturation and good amount. The amounts are similar in the trace, but less balance between alcoholic strength, acidity, and pH. The maturation standard of the Alvarinho and Rías Baixas. So the good thing we have here, that is this balance in between acidity and degree, we lose it in the pergola. Okay, so in the beginning, we think it might be temporary. At the end, we are forcing to compete the vines because it's really vigorous. So at the end, you are going against nature. So it can be temporary, okay? But 10 years afterwards, it's still the same. So the way it gets ripened, we don't like as good in the BPEs as we do in the pergola system. So there are two theories in the winery. Some we think that maybe with some more years, the plant will adapt and will get balance. And the others, for example, the responsible of the land here, he says, if it didn't get balanced yet, it won't balance in the future. Okay, so if you ask us, we stay with pergola. Okay, so at the moment we are planting 3 new hectares and we are doing in pergola system. Okay, but we can understand, of course, that in big extensions, BPEs can make more sense because it's so expensive, the pergola system, that we understand that they plant the BPEs, okay? But we prefer the pergola. So answer one, Pazo de Señorans is more fancy on the pergola, okay? The balance is much better. You also asked me if because of the climatic change or we are doing less malolactic. So, bueno, this is the winery. As you see, a lot of stainless steel, and all the stainless steel, as you see, are prepared to do the malolactic. We have double shirts, so we could do the malolactic if we like. This again, this is is harvest data in terms of juice, ¿vale? From 2012, this is Pazo de Señorans, until 2021. Again, we don't follow any pattern. You can see that some years the malic acid is quite high, like 2014, where it was the highest. And we have 4.6 in some other years. Okay, so we cannot go to any draw evolutionary conclusions. But what we see, to put you in the typical way of producing here, in Rías Baixas, the malolactic fermentation has never been a common practice, like in some areas of France. Here it was more a personal election of every winery. You wanted to do it or you didn't like to do it. Even in the beginning, not everybody did malolactic. For example, Pazo de Señorans is not very fancy of malolactic, only if it's necessary, because we look for another type of structure. Of course, when the malic acid is too high, we will do a part of the malolactic, but we will do it maybe 5% of the winery that we will mix up with the rest to low down a little the malic acid, because in our opinion, the malic is very difficult component of the acidity to tame. It will annoy our clients when they pass the wine by the mouth. And although people think it will get round in the bottle, it will never refine in bottle. is so aggressive that it's really disturbing, okay? What we think, fashion affects the production in some wineries, and there is a tendency in the past 5 years to leave the wines a bit sharper. So, but we think it will not be due to the climate change, but it will do much as a temporary fast phase of production, more a fashion than a real thing, okay? Because as you see in our case, we did Malolactic in the year 14, and we've never done it again until the year 2020 and 2021, okay? We like always wines with certain acidity, since it's typical of our variety, as well as its bitterness at the end, and we love them. So in the case of ourselves, we always leave quite high levels of acidity. They have never been low, okay? So again, to the question, malolactic fermentation is not going down. It's just an option of any winery, and we are just only do it if it's necessary. It's a very difficult process, difficult to sustain, and in our opinion, leaves the wines really flat at the end, okay? So you lose part of the vivacity, that the acidity of Alvarinho that you are expecting, the freshness and doesn't allow to do this big mouth that we normally are looking for. Bueno, this is again the experimental plot, the double gouillotte against the Pergola. And another question you ask about the future varieties, okay? As you saw in the beginning, we are allowed to use many varieties, so it's, they are all indigenous, and they are all indigenous, and Rías Baixas is focused always in indigenous. Here we are talking about Salnes area, okay, which tend to adapt much better to the territory and climate where there have been seen to grow. The Alvarinho grape has always been planted here, but we have deep nets, get more deep in our knowledge at the time that the DO was created, so in 1989, about 33 years ago, so we are kind of young, we could say. When we, the more knowledge we acquired, our preference were also created. Some of the plantations were moved from deeper soils to poorer soils some years ago. The valley has been always quite occupied by houses, as so many people live in the rural area. So many of the new plantations have already been planted on a slightly higher ground, in communal forests, communal mountains, for example. We are now, we have plantations around 200 meters, and even some of them are started to be around 400 meters. So the varieties approved by the appellation have been tasting since the beginning. And I have to say that there are other local varieties that have not been approved yet, like some viticultures that are recovering one new indigenous variety that is called Ratinha, that now we made a high request to the authorities competent, so they allowed us to put it in the appellation. But for example, so we try new indigenous varieties, but again, in our own experience, Pazo de Señorans, Salnes Valley always, okay, because it's more typical in the south of the region that they have already planted more Loureira and more Treixadura, because the ripeness there is better, okay? But in our case, we tried in the past Loureira and Treixadura, okay? And the maduration was not adequate. A few years ago, we also planted Blanca Legítima, which is another variety from Galicia, but not from Rías Baixas in concrete. And the ripeness, again, we didn't like it either. So the reality is that the Alvarinho continues to be the most complete variety in the area, which is why in the recent years, we are more focusing in tasting, in thinking in the future. We are tasting different root stocks to be able to adapt in the future in the best possible way. But we don't want to stop working with other varieties because we think they don't complement well enough the Alvarinho. So we think there is still a long way to be before leaving the Alvarinho against another varieties that are maybe poorer in terms of body to the wine, maduration with high acidity, low pH. So we have other solutions. We can go back to deeper soils. We can plant a little higher. For example, we are now experimenting with Richard 110 and another poles, those different root stocks that are more vigorous. So we'll fight better to the dryness of the soil, to the poorness of the soil. But we are still in the not cold area. This is, sorry, it says cold area, but we are not cold area, soft area really. We are in the north, and the Alvarinho has adapted outstanding to the territory and the climate. So it has a long life cycle. We are still doing the harvest second half of September. It is still coming up end of February, March. So we are still not changing Alvarinho grape for another. Okay, by the moment. Well, this is our wines, and thank you very much for listening, and sorry for my English.
Your English is fantastic, Vicky. There's no problem at all. So please do not worry. It was a great presentation, and there's lots of questions coming in. I am very conscious of the time, though. We have one more speakers, and I do want to leave time for everyone on the screen. So please hold on with your questions. We will go back to you, but I want to go now to Marc Picón. Marc, actually, we've been in touch quite a bit over the last years. When I was writing the book that was published in September last year, we were talking in terms of how is the Penedès region adapting to climate change, when we think that, of course, sparkling wine, you need the acidity to produce sparkling wine. So we've talked about that. And also Sumarroca does a lot to adapt, but also to mitigate climate change. So Marc, the floor is all yours.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. And Vicky, I like your wines, and César, I like all the wines from the region. I'm very in love with both of you. And Vicky, if you don't mind, send us a little bit of rain. If you don't mind, we need rain. First of all, this is the warmest and driest year, the last 100 years. And it's 8 of the last 10 years were the driest one, so consecutively. And so we are facing this climate change. For us, is quite obvious. And well, I will do a little introduction about who we are very fast, and then talk about the strategy we are doing to put our piece to apport value to the region and to try to pollute the minimum possible. No? So about Sumarroca, we are, it's a family winery. It's located between Barcelona and Tarragona, two very beautiful cities just in front of the Mediterranean Sea, where we can produce all cava, which is a sparkling wine made with the traditional method, or regular wine. And while we are basically, our vineyards are the highest elevation possible inside of the region. That is very important to keep this acidity that we will talk later on. And well, it's a very traditional region that we were producing wine the last 2,600 years. So that's part of the winery in Mr. and Mrs. Sumarroca house. That was part of the Biogas. So always was a very historical winery in Penedès. And well, as I said, we are well known and well reputed sparkling wine producer, a cava producer. No? So this is our land. We have the honor to have the land in the middle of a national park surrounded by forest, and that very helped us to have a lovely equilibrium thanks to the biodiversity. And later on, we will talk about the different projects to reintroduce the fauna and certain flora that has disappeared over the last years. And well, it's a very beautiful location, protected from the cold winds coming from the north of Europe, thanks to the mountains of Montserrat. These are very unique mountains. And well, you can see that everything is full of terraces and microplots that help us to produce many different styles of wines and covers. And well, just a few pictures. We work organically. We are certified as an organic producer since 2018, 100%. And but when we, I just wanted to show you pictures to put us in the map, no? But we have to change recently the way we are working the vineyards. For example, more and more we need the vegetation cover to keep the erosion, to prevent the erosion. Right now we are going to a tropical weather. It means that when it rains, that is very strange. It rains maybe 100 liters in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and that wash out all the organic material. And this erosion is crucial for the equilibrium of the plant. So all the vegetation cover will help us to protect these soils. That is the key point for the balance. Plus, a long time ago or years ago, we were just dropping as much leaf as possible to have a good irradiation. I'm talking about the grapes and have a good maturation of the fruit. Right now, we are going backwards completely. What we are doing is to, of course, we take a little bit of leaves because this is a little bit of crop currents and it's taking a little bit of water. But the leaf we are taking out are leaves that don't do anything in particular. They are randomly at the vine. And we try to protect the grapes as much as possible, trying to have the longest maduration possible to keep as much acidity possible. No? So creating a microclimate inside of the grape. Even right now, what we are doing is we are planting in lower altitude. So the grapes, instead of being at 1.2 meters high, maybe they are right now 60 to 40 meters. And so going lower, trying to, again, creating a microclimate, something that is fresher and that helps us to have a longer maturation and keep acidity. That is one of the difficulties we have in this area. So we are allowed to work with many grapes for wine in Penedès. However, 80% of what we have in our state is the traditional grapes, Macabeo, Xarel·lo, and Parellada. These three are white grapes that has been well adapted into the region, and that's one of the key points. When you are organic, when you want to go in that direction, the local grapes are the best option. Grapes that has been always working, always producing good quality, and that don't need any kind of extra treatments. When you are working with international grapes or grapes that are strange for us, then you have to work a lot at the vineyards, and you spend petrol and resources, and we are completely going against that direction. Well, as I said, we are organic certified and doing the things Vicky told you about the sexual confusion, etc., etc. And well, we will talk later about the sustainability. Just I wanted to put Sumarroca in the map for 1 second. And so what has happened is when we start, stop sharing and hold on. When we became organic, it was not enough for us. So we were facing a plan to for the next years in order to fight against the climate change that, again, in our region is very obvious. As I said, we have the privilege to be in the middle of a national park. 100% of the state, the fruit we are using for our wines belongs to us. So we wanted to continue producing wine as much as we can. So Vicky already explained you a little bit. I'm just going to put some extra information. There's a huge difference, or there's a little bit of difference between what is about ecology and what is about sustainability. Ecology is about not using pesticides or not using certain chemicals into the vineyards, etc. About sustainability is about the respect for the environment, recycling, and help to recycle and reuse it, and the rationalization of the consumptions and procedures. In other words, being sustainable requires to take a lot of micro decisions in every single department and every single step of production in order to be capable to achieve a real and what we believe a very romantic target, that is to produce good wines with no environmental impact or human environmental impact. No? So, so what our strategy was, as I said, in 2018, we finally certified 100% organic before we certified all the vineyards and then the cellar. So in 2016, we became part of a kind of a commitment in order to reduce the CO2 emissions. And that was ground zero, no? When we started thinking about different strategies and different procedures to achieve that target. No? So as you can see, now we are 2022. Till 2021, we have been reducing 25% the CO2 emissions. And every year we were doing our best. I will explain little by little what we did. But the target is in 2030 be reduced by 50% of CO2, and in 2050 be CO2 neutral, which is quite an ambitious plan. But we are very into that, and we are challenging ourselves to achieve that target. And I think more and more wineries are going to that direction, which for us it's wonderful. So 2022, it's another step we are doing. We are going to be certified by something called SMETA, SMETA, that not only certifies everything we are doing for the environmental assessment purposes, no, also the healthy and business ethics, etc. It's a certification that includes many different aspects in terms of the social responsibility for business and health, ecology, and sustainability. Okay, so that will challenge ourselves to put, new challenges for the future and be sure that we arrive to the target, that is to be in 2050 CO2 neutral. So in terms of energy, again, we are 22% reduction. In 2030 is the same, 50% of what it was consumed in 2016. That is ground zero for us. And the target for 2050 will be to be self-sufficient. In my opinion, this is the easiest target because we are investing in solar panels more. We already have some, but to continue developing this point of view, and we should be capable to be self-sufficient, hopefully, if everything goes okay and there's no more pandemics, etc., before 2050. Sorry. So about dry goods, that's also very important to, as I said, to think in every single step of the production, single department, what every single department can do to reduce any product that is not necessarily reused. No? So, for example, in terms of metals, we are improving our own recycle process. We are using capsules that has less aluminum and less plastic, even though the consumer maybe believe they look a little bit cheaper or they are not as cool as some others. We don't care. We believe that is what it has to be done. The bottles, we are using light bottles, reducing the weight a lot, even the cover. In cover, it's a little bit tricky because there's a lot of pressure inside, and the bottle can explode, literally. So we cannot reduce as in wine, but you can see that we are passing from 900 till to 835 grams, which is not bad, so about 9%. And in Nuri Lavarol, that is our top range of covers, about 6.5% less glass. As you know, about 70% of the pollution created during the wine industry, or thanks to the wine industry, is because of glass. So that's pretty cool to reduce as much weight as possible, even though the consumer maybe do not perceive the wine as in higher quality as it is, no? But we don't care in that sense. We are proud about what we are doing now. Plastics, for example, we were sending samples, and to be sure that the samples arrived correctly, we were using Forex pan. So no Forex pan, everything is carton. Or we have been removing all the plastic bottles of water that has been used for the employees. And we change it for tap water and crystal bottles. Or for example, you can see a picture of what we are doing with the capsules. Before, they were sending us a pallet with a box And inside of the box, they had another box, and inside this second box, they had we had the capsules, and between the capsules, they put even a layer of carton. So right now, what we are asking, we are buying more quantities, and they deliver us the capsules in this kind of blisters made of plastic, but it's a plastic that can be reused forever. And then when we finish, when we spend all these capsules, we return the plastic and we buy new capsules, and they come us again within this system, which reduce all the carton. That we know that carton is not the problem, but at least, as I said, we have to rethink every single procedure and everything in every single department. No? So what we have been doing, or what we did so far. So in terms of agriculture, we are removing every nitrogen oxide that is 300 times polluting, 3,000 times more than the diesel. We try to night harvest or early morning harvest. That's for two reasons. First of all, when we harvest and we receive and process the grapes will be chilled or in a cooler temperature. So we'll keep all the organoleptic quality and keep a little bit the acidity better. And we don't have to chill the grapes, so we don't need to put it in the fridge. That's common, and it's nothing against that, but it's something that happens worldwide. And so that means petrol or energy, or so we prefer to do the job during the harvest. And we have our water clean station. It's pretty much the same as Vicky's. So it's a biological one. We add oxygen, and there's a kind of a fermentation, and the water is clean and before it's reintroduced. And before it's reintroduced, it passes through a filter of silicate, and just to be sure that there's no solids reintroduced in the river. And after a few years or a couple of years, when we have sediments, we take all the water out, and these sediments are used for compost, not in our land, because it's not allowed to use this kind of sediments that are rich in organic material. In our land, it's not inside of the allowed by the CCPI, the ecologic certification, but it's going to a plant that it at whatever, and it could be used for organic material. No? Also, we are doing our own organic compost. We do several fermentations of the organic material. We add straw and water, and that has changed. That's quite interesting from my point of view. My grandpa that owned vineyard used organic material to empower the vineyard, to be sure that the vineyard was very productive. Right now, due to the global warming, especially this dry weather that we are facing, we are using the organic material as a sponge. So we put it in between of the lines, and instead of empower the vineyard, it's keeping more the water, and little by little, it's going deeper now, and the plant can absorb it little by little. No? Also, as we are in the middle of a national park, as I said before, we are inside of a European project called Biosphere. So we are reintroducing animals and fauna and plants that has been disappearing, typical from the Mediterranean, of course, typical from the area. For example, frogs or foxes or snakes or birds, owls, that always have been here, but the hunters or the pollution kill them all. And so together with the European Union and the government, as I said, we are reintroducing and trying to develop this equilibrium, this bioequilibrium. And as I said, we are more and more working with solar panels, trying to be as self-sufficient as possible. Also, the tractors. Using tractors are more efficient, or if we spray the traditional organic, the Bordeaux mixture, things like that, our spray machines are more efficient. So we are sure that we are passing less times, we spend less time in the vineyards, spending less petrol, spending less resources, or we put tanks in the middle of the vineyards to be sure that when we need to refill the treatment, we don't go straight to the winery and refill this bottle mixture, for instance. We have it here in between of the vineyard, and so again, saving energy and saving and polluting less. No? And nothing else. That is some of the things we are doing so far, and there's a lot more going on. For example, today I would like to show you, if you don't mind, if we have time, something that is quite new for us. It's about thinking every single detail. We had a wine called, you know, we won't see it. Okay, 2CV is a wine that, by the way, is that in Canada, the SAQ, that has the typical wax and is very fancy, a heavy bottle, and has labels. And instead of continuing that way, that by the way, we were selling a decent amount of this wine at different markets, we wanted to do it as sustainable as possible. So first of all, we use a light bottle. Everything is within serigraphia, no? This kind of, so no ink, no nothing. So as soon as you finish the bottle, you can recycle it and you don't need to clean the bottle. So we'll need less water to be recycled, to remove the labels, less energy to transport, less materials to produce the bottle. And we haven't done the idea to put wax on top. It will be a very short capsule, and even the cork is CO2 neutral, etc., etc. So we know that the consumer cannot understand everything we are doing for the environment, cannot understand everything we are doing for the sustainability. But if you want to be 360% organic and sustainable, you have to follow your own road, and that's what we try to do here at Sumarroca.
Thank you, Marc. I'm just conscious of the time because both Vicky and César have to go. So if you want to maybe stop sharing your presentation so we can see everyone on the screen, that would be fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I will go back to you, Marc, for some questions. But first, there's been some questions that have been coming in, both for Vicky and César. So I just want to make sure that we cover those first. So there was a question for César in terms of the water, and this is interesting. I could have a lot to say about that. And Michael is asking the question, Michael Figgin. I encourage you to, there's a link to a seminar I did in November specifically on water that addressed that question. But the question here is, I was at a talk the other day, and we talked about climate change and dry conditions and the impact on climate change. The comment from the speaker was plants/vines adapt to dry conditions, and so they're not overly concerned with water because they just think that the plant adapts. So César, what is your thought about that? Oh, your microphone. You just need to turn on your microphone.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So no doubt that all living creatures adapt to the circumstances, but certainly there's a work by us, by growers and winemakers to do here in order that to help with that adaptation. And I don't know. I mean, there's in the old world, there's a number of things that we can do, because it's not just the vinifera that we're using; it's also the rootstocks that we use. So we've been carrying out a lot of research here about using different types of rootstocks that would help us maximizing the capacity of the plant to really live with lower levels of humidity. There is an adaptation, no doubt about that, but that does not prevent us from getting concerned about the circumstances. So I'm still concerned, and I definitely think that, for instance, in our case, the research we're doing with the other varieties that have been used here before. I mean, I think it's the way to follow. I mean, try to research a little bit and see what the results are with other plants that historically have been used here. So yes, I partially agree with that comment, but partially disagree.
And I think what you're saying, César, is that I had a seminar that I did in November where we had old world and new world. So people who actually did not irrigate before, who were asking for the irrigation, and people in Australia actually going without irrigation. So it was a really interesting discussion, learning from each of the countries. And I think everyone agreed that it comes to a point where, you know, you can adapt to a point, but if you have no water, the plant will die eventually. You cannot go absolutely with water, right?
That's a big discussion here in Jerez, because traditionally, and even now, I mean, irrigation is not permitted here. I mean, it's we do not irrigate our plants, and traditionally that's been a measure that has been used by regulators in order to incentivize the use of good albariza soil, right? Because albariza has that water retention capacity. But the debate is there, and there's much discussion, internal discussion nowadays. And in fact, what we do is that we allow what we call emergency irrigation, right? So particularly in the first 4 years of the plantation, growers are allowed to ask for this emergency irrigation, providing that the quantity of water, of rainfall that we've had in a number of consecutive years is lower than the average, right? So of course, we don't want plants to be lost, but we firmly believe that there's a lot of things that you can do on the soil, like for instance the acerpia or proper plantation to make sure that the water that we normally get is enough for the plant to survive. But of course there's some hydric stress sometimes, and we have to we're concerned about that. Yeah.
I have a question while and there's maybe one question, is because I know Vicky and César, you will have to go. So I want to ask a question for the panel. And then I will finish with the other questions that were asked. So my question, nobody has talked about diseases, and you know, you all have very different climates where you are. What I find fascinating though is it doesn't matter who you talk to in the world, or the climate, everyone is feeling increased disease pressure. And I'm just curious, from your respective regions, what are the challenges, and what are you doing to kind of find a way to deal with this?
This is to whom? To all of us?
Yes. I think it's interesting because you're all from different regions, right? But
okay, I tell my experience, for example. Yes. Well, we still have quite a lot of disease, but normally the only one that is kind of problematic and is here nearly every year, except if the year is quite hot during the summer and spring, which is mildew. And we cannot look at if it is not here. So what we do to try to optimize the resources is, for example, with the station we have, that give us the data about humidity relative. We also, by the way, have problems with hydric stress sometimes. So it also advises us if the plant is suffering hydric stress, but mostly the humidity and the temperature is coming, and what temperature is there. So we still need to treat, but it's a way of just treating when it's absolutely necessary. You know what I mean? Yes. But it's the only way we can do by the moment, because we still suffer quite oftenly these illnesses. Against the others, we have not big problems, oidium, botrytis. So it's mildew that it becomes as crazy.
Sorry, Marc, I will let you answer, but I just want to go to César because he's going to have to run. He has another meeting. So I just want to make sure he answers. And then if he has to leave, then I can go to you.
Well, Yeah, I mean, what we see here is that what we're facing here is a very, random kind of, I mean, there is not a clear trend. What we see more and more is episodes of high humidity, suddenly high temperatures, and so this is really an area of concern. And the only way that we can work against that is, as Vicky was saying, getting more precise information. One of the efforts that we're doing in the region nowadays is having as many climatic stations as possible, right? We're planting climatic stations all over the place, because this is the only way to fight against this. It's not a common pattern all over the place, right? So we see episodes changing from one year to the next, from 1 month to the next, and definitely the future is more. I think what we will require is a more precise treatment policy, right? In order to obviously reduce the use of chemicals and things like that. Of course, we use more and more pheromones and all these techniques of sexual confusion and things like that. But in terms of treatments, what we need is more and more day-to-day information. That's the only way to face it.
Thank you. Vicky and César, do you still have a few minutes, or you got to run now?
Well, I still have 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Okay. So Marc, I let you answer this part of the questions, and then I'll go back to the other two.
Pretty much the same as César and Vicky explained, plus, of course, the selection of the grape. I insist on that, working with grapes that maybe are better adapted to the region. Again, mildew is a problem. I think in the 3 regions, most likely it's the problem that we have in front. And also in Penedès and ourselves, together with the University of Tarragona and some other people, we start experimenting with something called piwi. That is creating a new variety that could resist these environmental problems, with 2 targets, having less diseases and resist better the hydric stress. So basically, we have 4 or 5 grape varieties that are unknown, planted in our land, and we are attentive to what's going on in these plants, and if they resist as it should the hydric stress or the attack of the mildew, and how is the organoleptically, etc., we report, and we see if one of these could be planted in the future in order to resist the attack of the diseases and the hydric stress. That are the major problems we have in Penedès.
And that brings me to the last questions before Vicky and César run away. There was a questions about that, because you both talked about other grapes, right, in your regions. And there was a question asking, are those 100% Vitis vinifera? Because I think some people were wondering if they were piwis. So César and Vicky, when you were, I know the answer, but I'll let you answer to this. When you were showing other grapes in your region, were those Vitis vinifera?
Yes, well, sorry, César. In our case, yes, they are all indigenous.
Yeah, the same for us. They're all Vitis vinifera. Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting discussion to have, because people are looking for a solution. How do you treat less? How do you resist all of those diseases? And there's a lot of experiment. And I think somewhere between going back to a lot of forgotten grapes that exist, and all the diversity within indigenous grapes, and the piwi, hopefully we find, somewhere between all of those solutions to adapt. César and Vicky, I want to respect your time. Marc, if you could stay here, I do have a few questions for you. So everyone, if you want to hold on 2 more minutes, I know that we're almost done the seminar, but César, Vicky, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and I hope we get to do another seminar and we go even more into that. That was just an introduction. So I really, really appreciate it, and we'll see you again in another seminar, I'm sure.
Thank you very much. It was a real pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye. Nice to meet you, César. Bye-bye.
So Marc, just to finish, I had a questions about you, for you in terms of the packaging, which, you know, you finish on that. And I think that was really important because you're saying we don't care if the consumer doesn't want it. This is what we are going to do. And I think the more people who do that, then the consumer, that's what they see, that's what they get used to. My question is this: I've read a lot of market research in regards to what consumer expect in bottle and also different group age. Did you do the same thing before you decided to do that, or you just went full on and said, this is what we are going to do?
Of course, we are reading the research and everything that is in every document that it passed in front of us concerning that. Hold on, it's mute. I know, sorry. And but for us, it was the obvious next step to do. So for us, it was an obvious decision, and we go for it. We know sooner or later the consumer will understand more what they have in front, and again, if you build a brand and and Sumarroca starts to be an international brand, then the people don't pay attention about these details, don't care that much. They are buying the wine because it's good. That's it. So we are providing something extra that maybe the consumer don't know. And but it's the way that we believe that things has to be done. That's it.
And I just want to add a few things to that, because I'm quite this is a part that I think, you know, consumer always ask, how can I make a difference? They want to make a difference. Research have shown that it doesn't matter where you research in the world, whether it's Sweden, the US, Canada, especially when you look at the younger generations, they do want to buy a product that's sustainable, but they just don't know if they get lost into all of those certification and so on. And I always tell people, like, when we think that a large portion of the carbon footprint of a bottle comes from the glass, that's an easy, you pick up a bottle, if it's heavy, just leave it behind. And luckily in markets like Canada, in Sweden, for example, in Ontario, the monopolies say, okay, if the wine is $20 or less, you do need to use a lightweight bottle, which is great. But I would just want to tell everyone, if you're listening and you're a journalist or your producer or your buyer, I've read a lot of research about consumer and expectation with bottles. And to be honest, they don't really care. What they found out in all of the research that I've read is what influences the most the consumer is actually more the height of the bottle than the weight of it. And going forward, the younger generation, if the product is not sustainable, they just won't buy it. They are willing to pay up to $3 more a bottle in general if they know the product is sustainable. So as we all together keep on sharing that information to consumers, I just think that they will find out. So we need to get on board. And, you know, that's always inspiring, Marc, when I talk to wineries who just really do that step and to do that. So there's one last question and we're gonna have to wrap up, and it's for you, Marc. Can you please comment on the new categories that have been introduced within and outside of the DO that's not related to climate change? But so we will answer this question very shortly, because
so basically what the DO Cava wants to do is to relaunch the image of Cava, and especially the category of premium Cavas. So especially for the Cavas that right now are called Reserva, Gran Reserva, they will be called Guarda Superior, and there are extra rules to limitate the production per hectare and to increase the quantity of time the Cava has to spend inside of the bottle. For instance, to call a Cava Reserva has to be sleeping in our cellar after the second fermentation for 16 months. Right now it's going to be 18 months. So before it was 12,000 kilos max per hectare. I think right now it's 10,000 kilos per hectare. The category Guarda Superior has to be 100% certified organic, etc., etc., etc. So using local grapes, etc. So the point is try to create this icon category inside of the Cava appellation. No? So which is great for us, because even though we represent 0.4% of the appellation, we sell abroad 14% of the Gran Reserva Cava. So we are super happy that people has a little bit more extra regulation betting for quality. So that's what's going on in Cava, inside Cava. Then there's also different sub-regions classifications. So, for example, Sumarroca is what's called Comtats de Barcelona. So we are Cava, Guarda Superior as an aging, and Comtats de Barcelona as a region inside of the Cava region, a sub-region inside of the Cava region. That is interesting because it's true that Cava has many regions abroad inside of Spain. Even though the majority is produced in Catalonia, you can produce, and especially specifically in Penedès, you can produce Cava in Valencia, or you can produce Cava in certain villages of Basque country, so you can produce a little bit in Extremadura. And this has completely different soils and completely different climates, and they work with different grapes also. So it makes sense that the consumer know exactly where where comes the Cava they are buying. If it buys from Comtats de Barcelona, meaning the traditional area surrounding Barcelona and more specific Penedès, or whatever it's called in Valencia and I'm sorry, no offense, I don't remember the names right now. Or I
think we can find the information online.
I'm sorry, I don't.
Yes.
Lack of information right now. And that's inside of the appellation. Outside of the appellation, what's going on? So there's a group of producers who decide to make a kind of a gentleman agreement between them and create not an appellation, it's like a private brand called Corpinat that pursues pretty much the same rules and a different point of view. And they are very good producers as there are in Cava. And it was because they were not agree with some of the points inside of the Cava appellation. So it's a pity because I love the majority, or I love everybody in both sides, but some of my friends are in the other side or in Corpinat. Mm-hmm. But well, these things happen. They are doing their own work, let's say.
And there's one last question for you, Marc, and then we're going to have to wrap it up because I am conscious of the time and I want to be respectful for all of you who chimed in. So one of the question is, with your water management and treating water and recycling water, if you could irrigate, could it be practical to do so?
We cannot, and I'm afraid we will not do it. The problem is we don't have enough water in the region, neither in the country. So when you irrigate, you have to look for water somewhere else. And as generally speaking, we don't have water. It means you are taking somebody else's water. Here in Spain, a few years ago, we were fighting for the quantity of water we could take from the river Ebro, that is one of the most important rivers. And the country people, they were growing, or they are growing lemons or oranges, etc. They were fighting each other just for a drop of water. Yeah. So I think, in my opinion, in our opinion, on behalf of Sumarroca, what we have to do is teach the vineyard, be sure that things are changing, or understand that things are changing. So meaning lower yields, different kind of agriculture, different kind of wines. Be sure that you as a winery understand that, rather than look for a solution that, by the way, it will damage somebody else, and it's not an easy one.
Yeah, and I always like to say to tell people, if you look at what happened in South Africa a few years ago, I think we have a pretty good idea of what's coming to the regions where water is already scarce, where there was, the level of water in Cape Town was the lowest in history. People could not shower. Like they had what they could, but they had a limited amount of water they could use per day. And they told the agriculture, so not even wine, but they told people who were growing cereals, you cannot irrigate anymore. Like we have to cut the water. So, I think that's why it's good to find ways to grow without it, because when it comes down to it, the water is going to be remaining. It's not going to be for the wine production. It's going to be for people.
It's not only for growing vines. Also, there's certain things that we have to start thinking if we can eat this daily. For example, And no offense if somebody's growing avocados. I love avocados, but needs such a
lot
huge
of water.
water.
Yeah.
So, or we make it seasonal, or we reduce the quantity, or we increase the price, or we don't know. But it's not possible to eat certain things all year long and in huge quantities because it's not sustainable. That's the new reality, and hopefully the consumer will understand. The consumer and ourselves as a person will understand better what's going on.
Thank you so much, Marc. Thank you, everyone. I hope that you learned something. And I always say, even if you just learn one thing today and you share it with a friend, a neighbor, a customer, then that same person can share those ideas again. And then it is through sharing all of this information that we can ensure a better place for tomorrow. So thank you, everyone. I just want to remind you that the webinar, if you had to come part way to it or you had to leave earlier, the seminar is available, will be available online next week. All of the previous seminars are also available online at tastingclimatechange.com. We are taking a little break for the summer for the off programming, but we have a lot of events coming in the fall online as well. And so I just really encourage you to follow us through tastingclimatechange.com on the website, on Instagram, and also you can register to the newsletter to find out any of the information. Marc, thank you so much. Vicky, César, and again, everyone for being here. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you. Bye.